Here we've got the amplifier module, and as you can see, I've finished fabricating the hold down bars for the transistors. I've got all the transistors mounted for good with insulators and heatsink grease and everything. I got all the transistors, and I've got the new, you can see I've got the new connectors here installed on all of them. So that's done, and the other side is done. There's that. I got everything mounted appropriately, and just a couple more things to go. As you can see, I still do not have the bias diodes installed yet. Again, that is on purpose. I do have the new emitter resistors. Now, I was waiting for a while for some parts that are apparently going to be on infinite back order, so I had to make a substitution. These are still the same value. They're just individual resistors. I had to mount them at a slight angle here, as you can see. Every single diode on here has been replaced, and every single transistor except for some of these input dual transistor things. Those are original, as I mentioned before, but everything else has been replaced on here. So really the only thing I think I have left to do is I'm just going to check some connectivity with these connectors, make sure everything is really tight and good, and then I'm going to install the bias diodes here and mount to the heatsink. So that's what's left on that, and then I'll be able to hook this back into the receiver and give it a test. Well, here we are. I've got the amplifier module installed back into the receiver. Get a clear shot of it there. There it is. And I've got everything hooked up here to my dim bulb tester there. So everything's hooked up, and I'm going to give it a shot. I want to record this, so here goes. Okay, you can still see some brightness on the camera. That bulb is actually pretty dim. That's the largest one I have at 100 watts. Now I did hear a second click, which is a really good sign. I heard the first click and I heard the second click. Let's see if I can do it again and get it on camera here. That second click is the protection. That won't only kick in if things are pretty solid as far as what's going on in here. So let's see if we can get a picture. There's the relay back there in the center. You can barely see it. Let's see if I can get it to happen again here. Hold on. That was the first click. Did you hear it there? The second click. So that's a really good sign. Now I'm going to measure the DC offset, see how bad that is, and maybe start going about the bias, although I can't do too much on the dim bulb because the bias is going to change once I plug it in for real, so I can only go so far. So here I've got it powered direct now. I got my second relay click again, and everything looks pretty good. I don't smell anything. The second relay clicked, like I said, but I hooked it up to the right channel. And here I've got 500 millivolts, so the DC offset is at about half a volt. Now I'm going to try and adjust this. Apparently I went the wrong way here. This one is quite... Just barely missed it there. Oh. 0.5 millivolts, 0.4 even. This will change as the thing heats up. But I got it pretty close right now. So I'll go ahead and do the other adjustments here and maybe I'll give it a run for its money or give it a test. Well, here I am back with the SX3900 stereo receiver. As you can see, I've got the amp module back out of the receiver. And what happened was I put it back all together and turned it on, and everything is working, except I was not able to set the idle current properly on the amplifier. It was always just a bit too high. So I've actually been working on that now for about a week, trying various things. I found that in a few of the spots, namely the two spots for each polarity of the bias circuit in each channel, so 4 different places, here, and then this corresponding places on the other channel. The 2SC 1845 transistors I used were not good enough for that spot, and the originals tested okay, so I put those back in. In addition, I believe that these new driver transistors here with the little heat sinks, I believe they need slightly less voltage on the base to turn them on. I think it's just about a 0.05 volts difference than the old ones. I haven't been able to find good enough details about the old transistors. These have wonderful spec sheets, but the old ones didn't, so I can't really do a comparison. So I also had to change 2 of the resistors that were 220 ohm here and here. Let me try and zoom in for you a little better. Here and here. I had to upgrade those to 270 ohm resistors on each channel. And then I was able to set the bias, the idle current correctly. The offset is fine. But what I'm waiting for now, and the reason the amp module is not back in the receiver yet, is I finally got an email from MCM Electronics that these emitter resistors are in stock and they're shipping. They should be here in a few days. So I'm waiting to put those in before I put the amplifier module back into the receiver. But that's all that's left on here right now, is just to put those in, and then I'll put it back into the receiver and then go from there with the adjustments. So what I've got here is I've got the preamp and tone control board pulled out of the receiver. It was just easier to work on that way. There's a couple of cables that had to be directly desoldered, some ribbon cables, but I do have a nice, I've never showed my tools here on the video, but I do have one of these Heiko 808 desoldering tools, and it makes quick work of pretty much everything. So I decided it would be easier to take the board out, especially since I was replacing the switch. Now I've already done the switch replacement. It's here. You'll notice it looks a little different. This one's kind of bigger here at the front where the gears are. This one's a little bit smaller. But it is pin compatible, and it'll serve the purpose just fine. So that's soldered in there. I've got all my caps ready here, so I'm getting ready to recap this board. That'll be the next step here. So I'll be recapping it and deoxiding all the switches while I have it out, so everything is very nice and good to go for further running. I won't have to try and get in there and deoxid anything. So that's the next step right here. And here's the board after the recap. Now I have put some film capacitors in for some of the really low values, like less than 1 microfarad, and all the low noise ones are KL series Nichicons, and the regular ones are the PW series, the ones that didn't have any special net need. So at this point, I actually gotta put these wires back where they go. They were kind of behind here, but at this point I'm gonna put it back in. That's about it. I gotta clean the switches still, but then I gotta put it back in. This is the equalizer for the phono, and also the source select board here on the back of the chassis there. I just finished recapping that here. These are all brand new caps, except for these polystyrol ones. We don't touch those; they're fine. But all the other electrolytics were replaced, so that's all brand new caps. and kind of cleaned up the board a bit there. You can see there's some dust on there. Clean that up. Now everything is good. Got the preamp I did in, the equalizer amp preamp, and then did the phono board, and so really all that's left is some things on the tuner board per se. But my next project at the moment is actually going to be changing out these lights on the front. You can't even see them there. Let me try and focus. Nope, can't even really see them. Well, they're not on right now because I've got the wire unplugged. All the lights come together for a common ground, and that's this wire, and that's off right now. But I am going to convert to LEDs. Now, you can see I've got an LED in there for the speaker select, and I did the other one too. They're both done. You can see it there, the speaker select lights. Now there's a red filter inside the display, so that'll actually be red over there when it's all said and done. But these are going to be green. But I'm doing white LEDs for all of them. I also did, I think I might have mentioned it already in another video, but let me switch to FM. Or that's AM, FM. There's the light for the stereo and quartz lock, which is really a nice feature on this thing. I will admit, any of these older analog tuners that give you a quartz lock, that's really a wonderful. I know the SX1980 has it. I know there's some other receivers that have it, but that's a really wonderful feature. So here we are back with the SX3900, wrapping things up. As you can see, I've done some cable routing here with the wiring to try and clean it up here. Everything is routed really nicely. Tie wraps were used. So I've got that done. I've also, as you may or may not notice, got the dial string installed for the tuner. There, it's wrapped around there. And I got the pointer in here. There it is, right there. And get the tuner pointer works really nice, so that's really neat. Got it all lined up so everything numbers match on the analog dial and the digital display. So there's only a few things left to do now. One of them is going to be installing the light assembly that kind of rides over the top here and lights up the front of the display, and put the faceplate on and the case and put it all back together and just enjoy it. Well, here's the last update for the Pioneer SX3900. I've got it all back together. Everything's put on, all the knobs and everything. It's all on there, as you can see. I tell you, this receiver is pretty slick. It looks really nice. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I think I'm going to keep it. I really like it. It's a wonderful looking receiver. If you look at it on the table, it's actually leaning downwards slightly toward the left side over here, because that's where all the weight is pretty much. It's just the table flexing very slightly. It has a plastic table. That's not that the receiver is crooked, it's actually quite straight. But everything works. We got our lights, all our little switches work. We're on FM here, AM, auxiliary, phono 2 and phono 1, lattice control there. All our switches here work just fine. Everything here works really nice. Tone controls, everything else. Got our dial lamps installed. As you can see, everything's lit up there. I thought it was a little dim at first, but I started looking at some other pictures that other people had taken of this receiver, and it actually looks about the same. In a dark room, it lights up pretty decent. In a room that's as light as this one, it doesn't look that bright, but that is the way it's supposed to be. So there's the receiver. There's not too much wrong with it. The main thing that I can see is there's a very small ding right there, just a little dent. And that's about it. Otherwise, it's in really, really good shape. So, there it is, my Pioneer SX 3900.